I remember years ago, I was 31 years old, and I got a phone call from a man named Norman Vincent Peale. And Norman, if you don't know him, wrote the original book called The Power of Positive Thinking. He was a religious leader, and he's like, the world needs a different mindset because we're all finding what's wrong. But by the way, I have a simple phrase. I remind myself and everybody else what's wrong is always available, isn't it? So there's always something wrong if you look for it. But so is what's right. What's right is always available as well. And training your brain to do that is so critical because otherwise problems will overwhelm you, especially during certain times like winter when several challenges happen once. Financial, emotional, your body, your family, that's a winter. It doesn't matter what winter is outside. It's the one you're experiencing inside. We got to be able to get ourselves through it and out of it. So in order to do that, we got to understand something different. So Norman calls me up, was early in my career, and says, I'd really like to meet you. How about you come and be my guest at one of my seminars? It was up in Toronto, Canada. So I was totally honored. I flew up, I go to meet this legend. He was 92 years old. I was 32 years old. That's right. So a 60-year difference between us. Remember I said, Norman, I said, how come you're still doing seminars at 92? And he says, well, Tony, there's still a few negative people out there. Right. And I remember I had this chance to imagine somebody 92, like when he was born, there was no cars, right? This is years ago, 30 years ago, roughly, or the last 28 years ago, no cars, no computers, not going to the moon. Think of all the things in his lifetime, 92 years he'd seen. So I said, Norman, I really want to know. I mean, you've lived such an extraordinary time in history, such a long part of history. What's the most important thing you've learned? What's the most important thing? People need to know to have an extraordinary quality of life. And he didn't hesitate a moment. He said, Tony, they need to understand the power of problems. I said, what do you mean by that? He goes, well, most people are trying to avoid problems. They think if there's a problem that's happened, they've done something wrong. And he said, they don't understand that problems are gifts. He said, they don't understand the value of it. In fact, I remember, years ago, people quoted one of the things I said decades ago. And it was, if you don't have problems, I said, first of all, you don't only people that problems are people in cemeteries. And I smiled and I said, yeah, I heard that phrase. He goes, yeah, I said that in 1932 or whatever it was, right? It's like, holy shit. And he said, but Tony, they don't finish the whole quote. So my quote was, only people that have problems are in cemeteries. So if you don't have a problem, you better get on your knees and start praying for one and I'll never forget how he said this. He said, Tony, problems are a sign of life. See, if you don't have problems, you're either confused or you're calling it a challenge, which is wonderful, but everyone has it. If you're in business, you have problems. And what makes you a great leader is you solve problems quickly. You're not focused on the problem, you're focused on the solution. But he said, when this really came to me, Tony, the power problems, he said, I was speaking at this public speaking event and I was at this day. I said, there was a luncheon first and it was a group of speakers. And one of them was Gene Tunney. Gene Tunney was the world boxing championship of the world champion of the world back then. Mm-hmm. And he said he was unbelievably muscular fit, like he'd never seen a man before. And he said he was sitting beside me at lunch and I said, can I ask you a question, Gene? He goes, yeah. He said, how do you get muscles like that? And Gene Tunney's response, really, it wasn't, Norman wasn't paying attention. He turned to me and said, do you really want to know? Or are you just asking? And Norman said, I'm just asking, but I'm not going to say that now. No, I really want to know. And he said, build these muscles by every day pushing against unbelievable amounts of resistance. And that's what sculpts these muscles and gives me this power, this strength. And Norman said he thought about it for about an hour afterwards. He said, Tony, I realize God gives us problems for the same way to build our soul's muscle, our spiritual muscles, because in dealing with those, we have to push, we have to break through. And he said, that's what sculpts our souls. That's what makes us proud of who we are. I put a little metaphor here, a couple of them for you. I just want to remind you that when you decide you can't find something, also remember I said what you look for, you'll find. When you decide you can't find something, you'll also discover you won't find it. Because whether you believe something's true, whether you believe it's not, you are right. How many have the experience of having somebody say to you something like, can you find me the salt? You think to yourself, hey, will you go in the cabins and get me the salt? And as you're walking there, you're thinking, I don't know where the salt is. You walk up there, you open up, I don't know where it is. And you really do look, don't you? You really look. But you already have this belief that says, I can't find the salt. So what happens? You mislead and go, it's not in here. They go, what are you talking about? It's right there on the shelf. You go, no, it's not. They walk in, they walk right beside you, reach right in front of your face and go, what is this? And what is that? How many times has this happened to you? Now, the solve was already there. You said, Tony, what I look for, I'll find. Yes. It's what you look for in earnest. You'll find See, what you really want the answer to, you'll get. But you go, why am I so happy? But you really don't want to know the answer. You're not going to get the answer. But what's really great about this person, you will get an answer. It's only what you seek for in earnest. If you don't look for something, you won't find it. You're right. If you don't commit yourself to finding it, you won't. Good thing for you to remember. What do you do when an upset happens? Well, let me give you an example. What I learned from racing school changed my whole life. I race cars, formula cars, and so I went to several different schools, by the way, to do this. I'll never forget my first school. The first thing they really taught us at this one school for racing is they said, the first thing you got to do is you got to know how to recover. To recover before anything else, how to drive a car. You guys know how to go forward. You know how to do that. What you got to do is learn how to recover when you hit the skids in the road. Because if you don't know how to do that, your racing career is going to be rather short or rather painful. And most of you are trying to race through life. And a lot of you are having a rather painful time because you don't recover very well. Or you recover, but in the process of recovering, you smash into everybody else's car along the way. That makes the next trip around a little resentful for the other people. They see you coming by. They kind of avoid you a little bit going, I'm not getting too close to this doctor, this staff member, this person, this accountant, this secretary, this telephone person, the person around the calendar. I'm not doing that because if I do, they're going to smash me up too. In the process of them trying to recover. So what they do is they put you in a skid car where they make you go through the process of about to crash, where they knock you off track. And what it is, the skid car, they've got a little computer. They fire off this computer, and what it does, it has a little lift, and it lifts one of your wheels, and you never know which direction it'll go. So you're screaming around the track, screaming, and you're not doing full speed, like 140 miles an hour. They start you a little slower, like we're doing this morning. You're going to go about 60, 70 miles an hour. So that's 67 miles an hour on a track. It's pretty intense. And you're going right for a wall. And all of a sudden, you start to skid out of control. And what they tell you in advance is that what you got to do is when you start to skid out of control, there's only one key. Look where you want to go. Focus on where you want to go. Do not focus on what you're afraid of now. What do people do in life? We focus on what we fear, and we get more of whatever we focus on. That's what they tell you there. They say, look, whatever you focus on, that's where you're going to go. Whatever you focus on, you're going to get more. You focus on the wall, you're going to get a lot of wall real fast. It's going to crash. What you need to do is focus on what you want, not where you think you're going, not where you think you are. If you're not where you want to be, if you're not where you're wanting to go, focus on where you want to go immediately. Don't hesitate. They said, now what you're going to have to do is when you do this, it won't, because you'll still feel like you're going into the wall. Because what happens, you have so much momentum in that direction that even when you focus on where you want to go, there'll still be a little bit of momentum in that direction, and there'll be a little bit of a lag time before the car turns. So don't, because you don't see me turning. Turn back and look, because you do. You're going to go right there and crash. Keep there. You have to use that F word. So what does it fade? So what happens is you turn, you're going in. What most people do, first of all, most people don't even turn. What do I do the first time? I'm screaming along, and all of a sudden, I've got it controlled. Look at me. My instructor last minute saved my life by grabbing my head and going, and pulling my head physically in the direction I should be looking, which is directly 90 degrees opposite of where I was going, right? So I'm heading for the wall. This is where I need to look. So I'm about to crash, and he goes like this, and he's pulling my head over here, and all of a sudden I'm going, and I want to look back. Oh, when are we going to, and the last second it turned away. Oh my God, my heart's beating out of me. I said, maybe I should try a different sport. I don't know. This is a good metaphor for life. So let me do it again. So I got there, and you never know when they're going to do it. You're going. All of a sudden, I'm starting to love racing again. It's racing. All of a sudden, this is it. I started to go, and you know what I did? I pulled my head. I'm like pulling my head in this direction. I keep wanting to go in this way, and look at what it is. Pulling, and I'm waiting, and sure enough, the car turns just in time. After a while, you know what you do. Something happens. You notice what it is. You don't stare at what it is. You don't figure out what it is. So that's a wall smacking that. What would it be like to smack that? Ooh, if I smack that, my body will go here. My head will go there. No. What happens is you see the wall. You know what it is. You only acknowledge the problem long enough to know what it is and then move on. To know what it is. Focus on where I want to go. The minute I can identify what it is, and that's not where I want to go. So I'm heading for the car, and it's like, no, you just get off. It's so fast. Focus on what you want, and you'll get more of it. Focus on what you fear. You'll get more of that. Focus on what you want, and you'll get more of it. Focus on what you fear. You'll get more of that.